Hey everyone, I'm Geoff and today I'm going to be doing my March 2017 reading wrap-up. March was a really good reading month in total. I read 18 books, which was the third month in a row that I've actually managed to achieve this, which is frankly remarkable. I read a good amount of really good books, of which I am really pleased with. And without further delay, I'll get straight into talking about the books, because otherwise this video is going to be even longer than it is going to end up as already. So the first two books are Perilous and Endgame, both by Lindsay Buroker. These are books 7 and 8 in her Fallen Empire series, and indeed these are the last two books in that series. I will be doing a separate series review on all 8 books in the next few weeks or something, so I'm not going to say too much now, but suffice to say it is a science fiction series set on board a spaceship with a mixed crew. They are fun, fast-paced, and I greatly enjoyed them, thankfully. I'll talk more about them in a few weeks' time. Next, I read Mira's Last Dance by Lois McMaster Bujold. This is the 4th Penric and Desdemona novella. This is a fantasy novella series, which is currently ongoing. I'm hoping there will be more. I have a feeling, and from what I can remember hearing, there will be at least one more of them in this series. Obviously I'm hoping for more, but we'll see what we get. And I love this series, I really do. Penric is a young guy. He has been infested basically with a demonic spirit, essentially, which gives him magical ability. This makes him extremely powerful and extremely useful to his government and his kingdom. This book, however, is a direct sequel to the 3rd book, so I can't really talk about the plot too much. I mean, it's a novella as well, so it's already short, so anything I say would frankly destroy this book quite badly. But I absolutely loved it, however, and in this, Penric has to do some interesting things which are really funny to see and hear about, and also he interacts with some of the former inhabitants of the demon. Every time this demon inhabits somebody and then that person dies, the personality of that person becomes part of this collective. So this demon actually contains 12 different personalities, and in this he interacts with one personality in particular called Mira, and it's interesting and amusing for many different reasons, and I've really enjoyed this. Next, I read The Voyage Apprentice and The War Game, both by Lois McMaster Bujold once again. Now this is book 3 and 4 in her Bujold saga. This is a long-running science fiction series which currently stands at 16 books, but as far as I'm aware this has no signs of stopping just yet. This is based around the Bujold family, which is a sort of very powerful, sort of noble family within this empire set on this one particular world, and called Brea, and both books are fantastic for their own reasons. These two focus on a character called Miles Verkozigan, who was sadly born under very difficult circumstances, and he's basically got a disability, several of them, but he doesn't let this stop him. Actually, far from it, he kind of uses them for his advantage and lets people assume things about himself, and then he'll basically break their assumptions by doing exactly what they think he can't do. His character is frankly brilliant. The writing is fun and fast-paced. The plots for both books are intricate, well crafted, and frankly really fun overall. They've got dark moments, they've got light moments, they've got highly humorous moments, especially with Miles. And indeed the other character, the way he interacts with people is frankly brilliant, because he's a really nice character overall, but he will manipulate people and he's more intelligent than a lot of the people around him. So he'll just go into situations almost blind, apparently, and then you'll realise that actually he's not going in quite as blind as he appears, and he's able to get through these things with great flair. And I just love these books so badly. I mean, I'm so glad that I started reading these for Cozy and Books. I can't put into words how much I like them, frankly. They're just great, and I would recommend them to everybody. Next up is Seeing Red, Raising Hell, and Changing Fate, all by Patty Jansen. These are the first 3 books in her Ambassador series. She has just released the 6th book, and indeed I will be reading books 4, 5 and 6 in the very near future, probably in April. So I'm not going to be talking about them too much now, because I am going to be doing a series review in the near future as well, once I've read the next 3 books. But suffice to say, this is a science fiction series. The main character is a diplomat for a alien planet. He's a human character, however, and the overall feel of the books is quite different, because there is action in the books, and indeed there is combat and fights and things happening, but he's a diplomat though, so there's a lot of political intrigue and a lot of him trying to figure out exactly what's going on and where he fits into this, and indeed where everybody else fits in, and he's trying to work out a way of getting through the novel without everybody basically having to go to war, frankly, because of various, the big events that are going on throughout the course of the book. I thought these were really, really good overall. I mean, they were just fun, fast-paced. Yeah, again, I mean, I'm going to say that about a lot of books in this video, actually. And the way the characters interact is really, really good. I mean, yes, there's a few drawbacks here and there. I mean, they're a little bit over-wordy at times and things, I suppose you could say. But, yeah, it's only relatively minor. But I just really did enjoy these books. And anyway, I'll talk about them in a separate video in a few weeks' time. So that's it for all the ebooks I've read. Now I'm going to get on to some good old-fashioned book vibing. And the first book I'm going to vibe around is Always Coming Home by Ursula Le Guin. And yes, this is another master book, one of the other ones which I've got rather long. This book is hard to describe, but obviously I will attempt it. This is a series of short stories, written tales, oral tales, professional written documents, and all sorts of other odd little sort of pieces about this fictional civilization called the Kesh. I buddy read this with Rachel, and I am greatly appreciative of the fact that I buddy read it with Rachel, because if I'd read this on my own, to be honest, I may not have actually finished the book, because it just would have been so weird and so totally different from everything else that I've read. I might have just put it aside, frankly, and just sort of forgot about it, because it is weird. I mean, there's poetry in it, and there's essays, and it's just really bizarre about this fictional culture set in California, in America. The time frame is kind of unknown. It could be more recent, it could be in the future, you're never entirely told that. And it's a curious mix, it really is, and it's a really curious book. Frankly, I don't know what to make of this. I know Rachel will be doing a review of this. She may have uploaded it by the time this video is up, but whenever that is, she uploads that video, I will link that in the description box below. But it's a really curious one, and I still want to read more by Le Guin. Next up, I have read Planetfall by Emma Newman. This is the first book I've ever read by Emma Newman, and it won't be my last, because I really liked this book. Now, the premise of the book is fairly simple, as such. Described, a character called Ren is a 3D printing engineer on another world for this small colony, and one day a stranger walks up to the colony out of nowhere. They don't know who he is. I mean, obviously this colony is fairly self-contained, population is, and there is no other settlements that they know of, so where's this person come from? They don't know. They're obviously suspicious of him, and the plot goes from there. There's secrets to do with the origins of the colony itself, and various things you learn throughout the course of the book. And indeed, there is a sequel to this, and indeed there will be 2 more books set in this same universe eventually as well, so there'll be 4 of them at least. I really quite liked this book. It was very different because the main character, Ren, has some notable psychological issues, let's say, And these issues, which I'm not going to tell you what they are, of course, because, you know, that might be a spoiler, make for a curious interactions between her and other characters, because she's a sort of flawed character, I suppose you could say. I mean, she's perfectly normal, though, from my point of view, but you could say technically she's flawed. And she's a really interesting character and a really nice character who just happens to have issues that are quite detrimental to the way she interacts with people in a very odd way. The characters are well described. Indeed, the main character, Ren, is really well described. Her psychological thoughts and the way she thinks about things is done extremely well. And indeed, this colony and the world is also done really, really well as well. And the plot is actually interesting. The book isn't the easiest to read, however, because it's so different from to sort of get used to a main character like this and this world, which is a little bit unusual. It took me a little while to get into the book, but once you do, I really did enjoy it because it was just really fun and really thoughtfully written and well written, and I would highly recommend this to people because it's just really, really good overall. I'm really glad that I read it. Now, the next two books that I read are The Child Garden by Geoff Ryman and China Mountain Zhang by Maureen F. McHugh. Now, both of these are award-winning books. I'm doing my SFF award-winning book project, and indeed there will be a separate video about that which will feature both of these books, so I'm not going to say too much now, but suffice to say they are both really, really interesting. I liked them both for their own individual merits. We had some really interesting discussion in the Goodreads group as well, which I'm really glad of because it really made reading them much more fun, much more interesting than it would have been if I'd been reading them entirely by myself and not been interacting and talking with people about them, frankly. So I'm glad and grateful to everybody who joined in on that conversation on Goodreads because it made the books much better than they would have otherwise been. Next is Seveneves by Neal Stevenson. Now this is the biggest book I've read this year, in fact, and I'm going to be doing a separate review of this book in the next few weeks, so I'm not going to say too much now. Suffice to say that literally at the start of the book, the moon, our moon, just suddenly explodes for no apparent reason, and this is obviously disastrous for life on Earth. So basically the book is about humanity scrambling to try and survive before the sort of apocalyptic events that follow the exploding of the moon, which is already bad enough as it is, will happen, and they're trying to survive as a species. And it's a long book. It's not the easiest to read, but I think it is well worth reading, and I'll talk about more of this in a video in a few weeks' time anyway. Then I read The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. I'm slowly working my way through several of H.G. Wells' more well-known books, and this is definitely one of them. The Invisible Man is a classic premise. I've always been curious about it because, of course, the idea of an invisible man who runs around completely invisible, who then becomes weird because of his apparent sort of invulnerability to things, is a classic tale, and this is obviously the classic tale. In this, a scientist discovers a formula to make himself invisible, essentially. To start with, he is just trying to survive because being invisible means that his clothing is not invisible, so he has to run around naked basically, otherwise people would see a pair of empty clothes, like empty trousers and a t-shirt with no physical body in them, and obviously that would scare everybody to death. And unfortunately though, because he can run around and do whatever he wants, and obviously he has to essentially steal food to survive and steal things to survive, he starts to become rather twisted, let's say, in some really quite nasty ways. And by the end of the book, his transformation from the perfectly okay scientist that he was to what he becomes is complete. And I didn't expect certain events in this book. I thought I kind of knew what was going to happen, and indeed I did for the most part, but there were some interesting surprises along the way. which I am grateful for. It's only a very small book, it's less than 200 pages, and indeed you can actually download this for free as well from the Project Gutenberg website, so I would highly recommend it because frankly you can get it for free. And it's just an interesting tale, about morality, and if you thought you could get away with anything, would that mean you would try to do anything and try to commit crimes, or would you still be able to maintain your morality and your sense of what is right and wrong? Obviously in this book the main character doesn't hold to that, and he actually does lose this sense, but would you be able to? This and several other questions related to this are ones that Wells asked in a really interesting way, and frankly I actually probably enjoyed this Wells' book probably more than almost any other. I think this probably may well be my favourite H.G. Wells book to date, so I'm quite happy about this. Next up is The Rats by James Herbert. James Herbert is a classic British horror writer. This is actually the first novel he ever published, and I'm going to do a separate review of this in a few weeks' time, so again I'm not going to talk about it too much now, but suffice to say it is a short book, it's fast paced, dark, brutal, and I really enjoyed it. This is the fourth book I read by James Herbert, and it definitely won't be my last, and I just really enjoyed the book and I would recommend it, but I'll say more in my video in a few weeks. Next up I read Sent to Kill by Vince Flynn. This is the 8th book in the Mitch Rapp series, of which there are 15 in total. In this one, Mitch Rapp, which is the name of the main character, he is a CIA assassin essentially, and he goes around trying to stop terrorism and also fight the sort of political figures in his own American government who are, some of them are on his side and believe in what he's doing, some of them obviously don't, and some of them are trying to manipulate the situation for their own ends. This one follows on from the last book surprisingly well, and it's also one of the thickest of the Mitch Rapp books so far. It's actually over 600 pages, which is actually the only one that's over 600 pages so far. Actually, I think not many of them are this long actually. I really like this book because it is darker than the others in ways that I didn't expect, and it's more sort of brutal in places as well than I thought it would be. I mean, the other books are not light-hearted by any means, but this is darker in a different way. I'm not going to say why because it'll be a spoiler, but it's just a good, fast-paced action thriller with good characters and some good twists. The last few books I thought were a little bit, not bad, but they're just kind of a little bit predictable and a bit like, they're okay. This actually raises the bar a little bit again, and it actually is an improvement on the previous few. The next thing that I read was The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. Now this is a novella published by Tor, and this was quite an interesting one. This is based on a H.P. Lovecraft novel. Basically it's a kind of modern retelling of it, and this is a very odd and very dark sort of tale. It is about a young black man living in New York. He lives in one part of New York. He gets one day he meets a white man who offers to pay him to play his guitar at an event he's holding, which he does, and events go from there in a really weird and dark way. I mean, it is inspired by Lovecraft, and indeed a retelling of Lovecraft, so it is going to be peculiar because Lovecraft was known for his dark tales and being very weird and freaky. And indeed, this links in with the whole Cthulhu mythos that Lovecraft obviously was responsible for creating, which is obviously very popular to this day. And I really liked this. It wasn't the easiest to read despite its short length because it was peculiar at times. Also, Victor LaValle deals with the racism that happens as well because the main character is black, and the racism at the time the book was set was still really severe. I mean, more so than it is now. I mean, there's still really heavy racism, unfortunately, and it makes it a bit hard to read sometimes because reading about racism, especially as obviously I'm not used to racism myself, of course, being what I am, isn't the easiest thing to read, but it was worth reading, and I am very glad I read this because it was short but powerful and extremely well written overall. And finally, the last book that I read was the Cyberiad by Stanislaw Lem. Stanislaw Lem is a Polish author, and this is a very unusual collection of science fiction short stories. Now, this features two main characters. They are inventors, and they invent all sorts of weird and wonderful things throughout the course of the very short stories in it. One of the short stories, for instance, has one of these two inventors creating a thinking machine, and they test the intelligence of it by asking it the simple question of what is 2 plus 2. The machine comes up with the answer that it is 7. They obviously tell the machine that it's wrong and try to sort of fix whatever the problem is, and the machine basically doesn't like the fact that they're telling it that it's wrong, and it gets a bit annoyed. And it's a weird little short story, and it's equally brilliant as all the others. Every short story is a little bit different and a little bit weird and out there, and I just loved this book because every story is really weird. I mean, it's vaguely similar to other things in slight ways, but not really. It's like he's taken normal science fiction ideas and then he's just gone in a slightly weird way, I think like a right angle, completely in a different direction with them. And the way the characters interact, the way the technology in the book works. I mean, the technology in particular, this is not normal, traditional, at least by modern standards, science fiction technology. This is unusual, and I loved it for that reason. I mean, I'm definitely going to be reading more by Lem. I can't really describe much more about this book because it's just so weird, but I can say it's fantastic, and I would recommend it to anybody wanting a science fiction book that is frankly different. So, with that said, that's it for this wrap-up. A really good collection of really good books overall. If you've read any of these or would like to, then please leave me a comment and we can have a discussion. As always, any suggestions on other books you think I might like based on any of these, I'm always welcome to hear as well, because obviously I want to get into new books, new authors myself. All my social media links, as well as links to anybody that I mentioned, will be linked in the description box below, as always. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.